So Paddy, for those who are entirely unfamiliar with the Tune Collection or only have this scantest idea, can you talk a little bit about what it is, why you're doing it, and what's your intent?
Yeah, well, I've had a lot of obscure tunes for years and years, you know, and most people or musicians tend to gravitate towards jigs, reels and hornpipes. But with this collection I've dug up a lot of set dances, I think there's about 30 set dances, and I also got together about 44 slides, you know, the Kerry slides. Then there's slow airs. I have a number of slow airs recorded that wouldn't be usually heard at all. And there's 4 kinds of jigs. So I recorded hop jigs, single jigs, slip jigs and double jigs, you know. And a lot of these tunes come from old recordings, you know, from the 1960s, as well as contemporary recordings that I listened to and learned tunes from. And so there was a lot of research involved, especially with you know, the slow airs and the harp tunes, and there was another category of tune as well, which was the walking marches and clan marches, and there's amazing history behind some of those, so I was able to dig up a lot of that. And
can you talk about one of the clan marches? Yeah,
the clan marches are, there's some of them, they're very, very old, you know. Most of them I recorded, I suppose, would be from the 15th century, or sorry, the 16th century, I think. And there's a couple then I have that were played at the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, where Brian Boru had marshalled all the Irish soldiers together and defeated the Vikings, I'm sorry to say.
Viking sympathizer.
So we have the music, a lot of music from those days, you know, that some of which is written down, some of it is not. Some of it has not been heard, you know, on a musical instrument. So I recorded, I don't know how many marches, probably about 30 altogether. So,
and what would have been the function of those marches? What was the origin, typically, if there is such a typical? Yeah,
well, they're very melodically very satisfying, you know, and of course this project, all these recordings are for musicians, both learners and advanced musicians. And as Irish traditional musicians, it's always good for them to experience as many different kinds of melodies as possible, you know. Outside of jigs, reels and hornpipes, some of the older melodies are very, very influential, you know, and give great, they're able to sort of expand your ear, you know, and you know, the melodies like the March of the King of Laois to me is very fulfilling, you know, and inspirational. And with Irish traditional music, there's always the need for inspiration, you know, so as young people will practice, and I know older people that are already playing their instruments, they can go back over a tune and rethink it, you know. So there's a lot of benefits with a tune collection, you know, especially if you have them all in different categories, you know. There's a lot of people have a number of slides that they play, maybe a dozen, but to have 44 of them on one CD is a great asset, you know. And the same with the harp tunes. I have a lot of O'Carolyn's tunes as well as others, and they're on one CD as well. And the same again with the slow airs, you know. You can, you know, most people, you know, from what I know of musicians, you ask them to play a slow air, and the first reaction is, what will I play? You know, to have problems remembering their tunes, you know. So this is a good, you know, these recordings will be very helpful.
And are you speaking mostly about this, the volume 3 of it? right now?
Yeah, volume 3, the one
Okay.
I've been working on, yeah.
Yeah. And can you just give a little bit about volume 1 and 2, and even before that, like,
Yeah.
what inspired you to do it? I mean, it sounds like you're already covering that a bit with, well, it's a resource for musicians and why they need it. But
Yeah.
just sort of like, did you wake up one day and have your Wheaties and this came to you, or what was the... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, the foremost thought was saving the tunes, you know, and you know, I was afraid if I got older that I might forget many of them, you know. And as well as that, there was a lot of solo tunes, you know, that I got from solo instrumentalists, and they were fairly fresh in my mind, and I put a lot of them on the first tune collection, you know. And then, of course, there was another part of it as well, you know, when I do a project like this, I don't have to worry about touring. I can stay at home, you know, for a year or a year and a half, whatever time it takes while I'm recording and writing up all the information on the book. So it serves, you know, a few purposes.
And volume 2, what was the focus or the focuses of volume 2?
Much the same thing, you know, except that with the first tune collection I did 400 reels and 100 double jigs, but on the second set, part 2, I have 100 polkas, 100 reels, 120 hornpipes and 150 double jigs, and so there was a wider variety on the number 2 collection. And then there's an even more wider variety on the present one that I'm doing. So there's no scarcity of tunes in Minnesota.
Mm.
But they're very handy to have, you know. And I wish I had something like that when I was younger, you know, learning tunes and trying to scrape up a tune or chasing down a version of it, or, you know, you'd hear a bit of a tune, you know, back in the 1950s or 60s, and, you know, you hear a portion of it and it would be just absolutely beautiful, and you'd be waiting for it to be played again on the radio, and that could be weeks, you know. And I wasn't able to get a tape recorder until I was 18, you know. And of course that was like a miracle, to be able to record a tune and play it over, you know, over as many times as I wanted, so as I could learn it. So
you mentioned that some of these you collected from old recordings.
Yeah.
And some of them I think you collected from other living musicians at the time.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a couple instances or some recollections?
Well, I you know, I didn't care who they were, like, you know, or I didn't care about the musicianship. If they had a nice tune, I'd go after them, you know. I got great tunes from Paddy Cronin, who died there a couple of days ago, the County Kerry musician. I got tunes from listening to 78 records, lots of 78 records of the Sligo Fiddlers and Patsy Toogie from Galway and all those. And, you know, there was, of course, John Kelly and the tunes that came with him from County Clare. I knew him when I lived in Dublin, and I got a lot of stuff with him. He played in the same bands as I was in, and he had a vast repertoire, you know. He was a walking encyclopedia of music for the concertina and the fiddle, which he was great at both. And other members, of course, of the Castle Kelly band that I was with, you know, Sean Keane and Michael Tuberty and Mick O'Connor. You know, I learned a lot of tunes while I was rehearsing with the band, you know. We would usually try and dig up, you know, new tunes, new old tunes, you know, to impress the audiences. Because at that time there was the folk revival, and there was a whole slew of young people learning flutes and whistles and fiddles, you know, and they were dying for new tunes. You know. And the Castle Kelly band provided that through recordings on radio and playing, of course, in competitions as they did, you know. They'd always have these great selections, and they played clan marches as well, which no band was doing at that time. And the first time I heard the Castle Kelly band that I later played with, the first time I heard them playing the March of the King of Laois, I thought it was heaven, you know. So it's been a long process and a mixture of different ways, you know, to get tunes. And I would sometimes write to people or send them, you know, tapes, and they would send me back tapes, like, you know, and
nice.
I got tunes that way as well. I recorded tunes off the radio, you know.
Did you ever do the old reel-to-reel, house-to-house? Not quite with it on your bicycle, but, you know, going into the countryside doing it?
Well, I did, yeah, I did some of that. I'd have the reel-to-reel, yeah.
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 Or you're actively going out and you hear, oh, so-and-so here.
Well, I tried to be low profile, you know. I didn't want to be conspicuous or anything like that, you know. I was very careful. I remember one time going into a house in Donegal, you know. There was two fiddlers lived there, two brothers. O'Byrne's were their names. Mickey Bawn O'Byrne. Bawn means white, he had white hair. And then there was Francie Jarrag O'Byrne. Jarrag means red, he had red hair. And they used to play standing up with their backs to each other. That's the way they played. And the reason they did that was to facilitate space, and you know, they served as amplifiers to each other. They could hear the other guy easily, you know. But when Francie realised I had a tape recorder, a small tape recorder that I left on the table, he broke into a sulk and went outside and wouldn't come back into the house. So that was the end of my recording there, you know. But I got a couple of great tunes
before
so I didn't care,
you know?
Yeah, I that's where I got the gravel walks. And we played it in Dublin with the Castle Kelly band at the Oireachtas in 1970 and won the competition.
Really? Cool.
Yeah. And when the crowd heard the tune, you know, in particular that tune, they went crazy, went wild. A cheer went up, like, you know, you think there was after being a goal scored for England, you know. It was amazing stuff.
Aaron was mentioning that for some tunes, we had a little talk about this before, but for some tunes you're trying to record the particular setting or arrangement, and others you're just trying to record the basic tune. Can you give me some thinking about why do you do, you know, how do you decide one way or the other, and which ones are you particularly happy that you got that setting?
Well, you know, I'm very careful, you know, not to over-ornamentate a tune, but I like to play the basic tune for people to learn, you know. And the melody, you know, stands out. It stands out more, you know. You can feel the tune, especially now with slip jigs and single jigs. James Kelly sent me about 30 single jigs, and I was amazed at the quality of the melodies of these tunes, and nobody plays them, you know. This is the, people don't play many single jigs at all, and they're great for listening to and for dancing to. Dancers can relate to them very well because of the long notes, you know. Yeah. The rhythm and timing of the single jigs is easy to recognise, you know. So they're great for playing in dance halls.
Uh-oh.